constant spending, you see it may have peaked, and if you look at the change from the previous period, the next to last column, you will see now in this 2000, 2008, 9-year period, you actually have a decline of 7.3% in adjusted dollars over the previous decade. That is scary because it's starting to show that we can't keep up. If we can't keep up, what's the natural thing is we're going to look to reallocate from another spending silo, or we're going to go back and look at how are we spending the money. And this is really the time to make the case, because I think this is showing that we've reached the limits of our ability under the current system. And unless the system changes, this is going to be more of this. Will the system change? The stimulus 3 that the mayor talked about, passed by the House as a jobs bill, it had in it a bill that was sponsored by Bill Pascrell of New Jersey. That portion of the bill would take private activity bonds used for water and wastewater out from under state volume caps. So this is one of the first new measures since before 1986 where the tax code is actually being looked at as an opportunity for local government to have greater access to private capital to pay for a public good. Will it be in the Senate? I believe Senator Menendez should have yesterday or today introduced a companion legislation on the PABs as a provision of the Senate jobs bill. This is very important because if private activity bonds are used for some of this, then localities are going to have another tool in their toolbox. And many localities are, maybe at or just below their bond cap. And taking out another municipal obligation bond may not be in the cards. Doing a revenue bond is a gamble because you're going to go out for a referendum. Now, some of them will pass. This is America. We have so many and so much going on. But if you have a private activity bond approach, it doesn't count towards your bond cap. So it's another way of doing this. And I'm going to say something fairly radical here. Cities need to not only embrace partnerships, they need to start looking at selling equity stakes in their water and wastewater plants and employing private equity, not private debt. And they can do this and still maintain control of the future of the facility, still maintain controlling ownership, still maintain control of the service delivery. But they can raise capital from the private sector. Think about pension funds. You got people, especially public pension funds, we're talking with several of them now. Public employees, federal, state, county, currently working, paying into the fund, retired workers getting distributions from the fund. They like in their portfolios to have very stable investments as part of the portfolio, in addition to some of their more risky stuff. And for pension funds, not too risky. But municipal bonds, a 0.04% default rate for water and wastewater. Very safe. Not a big return, but a very safe return. And that return provides a much needed public service for those people who are working and retired. Reinvesting in their own community systems makes a lot of sense. But we're here, the conference of mayors and mayors, we're here to raise these new ideas. Will they become the vote? I don't know, but let me suggest this to you. In 1992, then President Bush signed an executive order 12803, which for the first time said that if you want to do a partnership with the private sector, You no longer have to repay the original construction grant we gave you, by the way, 30 years ago. Okay? And every federal agency, this was Clinton in 12-863 executive order, every federal agency will look on their books to find impediments to partnerships. In 1997, the U.S. Conference of Mayors President Richard M. Daley, Mayor of Chicago, made an argument to Richard Rubin, then Secretary of the Treasury, about changing tax rules, not the tax code, change the tax rules to allow longer than 5-year contract ops partnerships, 20 years plus. So you had in 92, in 96, and in 97, you had 3 major paradigm shifts for local governments to be open to working more closely with the private sector to provide a public service. If we see the passage of this private activity relaxation, I think it'll be another milestone. But it's simply clear to me, and I'm not speaking for the mayors, I'm not speaking for Mayor Stratton, or the mayors and the Mayor's Work Council, but it's very clear to me as an analyst that if we don't access private capital, we're not going to be able to do this. And there's going to be a real argument over rolling back Clean Water and Safe Drinking Water Act goals. We don't want to be in that argument. We want to be for them, and I'm sure you all do too. So we have to have what we're calling for is a national coordinated strategy where Congress will provide more money, but they'll also relax the tax code to allow us to raise more money. And also, there needs to be something done with the EPA to get them to understand our ability to pay to implement the unfunded mandates. And we're not saying don't do them. We're saying let's phase them in. You have a family of 4, and you have 2 children. They're all going to go to college at the same time, but you want that new Mercedes and the new condo. And the retirement package and the summer vacation. Well, we all say to ourselves, we have to live on a budget. Why can't EPA do that? Why can't they look at our budgets and say, what can you really afford? And I think, it's really uncertain. We have an uncertain future, and that's part of the fun is we get to work it out. But you heard from a gentleman from Texas last night who I thought gave the best advice I've heard in years. If you're not at the table, you're on the menu. That's all I have. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, go ahead. What would you say are the biggest barriers to entry for the private equity markets or the private capital investment markets to be owner-operators of the municipal water systems, not just investors, but actual owner-operators? In view of the fact that it's certainly a viable, long-term investment that is obviously required, and the fact that people have to have water. I mean, I can understand where there'd be certain caveats with respect to pricing and all that you'd have to put in place. But what would you say is are the major factors that prevent private equity from investing in you?
Fiddler on the roof, tradition. All right, tradition is your biggest problem. And so we haven't done that before. But we have investor-owned utilities in drinking water, and they're very big systems, and for the most part, very well run. And they're rate regulated, so they're not, as you would say, raping the consumer, which is what the charge would be. We don't have that same situation in wastewater. It's usually municipal. And in the past, before the 1986 Tax Reform Act, there were lots of developers who did package plans that walked away from them and dumped them on the communities. That's a bad experience. So tradition and bad experience are some of the barriers. The current impediment right now is